All right, welcome back. Today I wanted to start diving into some of the requests I've been getting from a lot of my students. Apparently, this past year, it's been over the last maybe several months that this has been kind of coming up, but students have been talking about how there was this Costco essay. They got a student into all these Ivy Leagues, and it obviously piques my interest, and I'd love to see if I can use my experience and my my insights into what kinds of essays I've seen over the years do really well. Kind of try to apply that to see if I can show you an analysis, and that made me start thinking about how this might be a series I'd love to start doing. If viewers wanted to start bringing in essays, I could give you a general overview. I'm not sure how we'd figure that out in terms of um, students that want to maintain privacy or things like that. But anyhow, I think that if you find this helpful, I'm more than happy to do this. I love doing this stuff. So without further ado, let's take a look at what is the Costco essay. What the heck? Why is it so hyped up? Let's figure it out together. So if you type in the Costco essay, you'll be able to see this right here. This essay got a high school senior into 5 Ivy League schools and Stanford. Um, let's see. I mean, you have headliners like this all the time. I hope that we're aware that while an essay can carry you to a certain degree, it can't carry 100% of you. She obviously probably had really good grades, test scores. She either had some certain types of tags, etc. It wasn't just the essay, guys. Just a really good essay doesn't remedy straight C's, okay? But I just got pasted some of the details here. High school senior Brittany Stinson learned Thursday she was accepted to 5 Ivy League schools: Yale, Columbia, University of Pennsylvania, Dartmouth, and Cornell. Really good schools. Can I parse something out of this? Well, there's no Princeton, there's no Harvard, and that's kind of the way it goes. You get accepted to maybe 1, 2, and then you get rejected or waitlisted from the rest. The fact that she got into 5 is actually very impressive. I think the impressiveness really will also come down to, as I mentioned, tags and I'd argue socioeconomic factors. If this is an Asian student in engineering and got accepted to all of these, I would be genuinely thinking like one of the most insane chances, probabilities, like 0.0001%. So there's other factors like that come into play here, but still, nonetheless, a fantastic achievement. Kudos goes out to her. She's clearly smart, gifted. She obviously worked for it to get a result like this. So I don't want to take anything away from her. She also got into Stanford, huge, which has an acceptance rate of 4 point. That's actually lower this year. I'm sort of still in shock. I don't think I've processed everything yet. Oh, that's sweet. So very humble. I love that. The Ivy League is notoriously hard to get into. Everyone knows this. The school Stinson was accepted into having acceptance rates ranging from 13% to 4.6. I think the 13% is a high ball estimate for Cornell, perhaps Dartmouth, but yeah. Stinson graciously shared her common application admissions essay with Business Insider, which we've reprinted verbatim below. I'm going to leave the link in the source here. Let's jump into it. Prompt number 1. So, by the way, when you're applying, it's through the common application for the majority of the Ivy League schools, top 20 schools. Besides the common app, you'll have the UC app, Coalition app, Universal app, and I can go into a different series about that. But prompt number 1 is they have 1 of 7 prompts. And truth be told, which prompt you choose is not really that important. I'd argue that you want to use the 7 prompts they give you to just air out your ideas to see which one you'd fit best. It's not so much that number 5 has a blah, blah, blah percentage chance of getting better acceptances and yada, yada, yada. It's nothing to do with that. It's choose the prompt that best tells your strongest personal story. So she went prompt number 1. Some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. So what I'm going to be doing when I'm reading through personal statements, I'm looking for genuineness. I'm looking for, obviously, a certain degree of English mastery, communication skills. I'm looking for, I would say, EQ and IQ for the most part. EQ being emotional intelligence, community social intelligence, IQ being intellectual vitality, intellectual depth. So hopefully I'll be able to point some of those out to you. Like, these are the things I notice that I would be very happy to see a student showing in a draft if we're working together here. So, managing to break free from my mother's grasp, I charged. Ooh, I love that intro. See that action? You know, like Hollywood movies begin with an explosion and then it starts. I charged. Excellent intro. Grabs me right away. With arms flailing and chubby legs fluttering beneath me, I was the ferocious 2-year-old rampaging through Costco on a Saturday morning. My mother's eyes widened in horror as I jettisoned my churro. The cinnamon sugar rocket gracefully sliced its way through the air while I continued my spree. I sprinted through the aisles, looking up in awe at the massive bulk products that towered over me. Overcome with wonder, I wanted to touch and taste, to stick my head into industrial-sized freezers, to explore every crevice. I was a conquistador, but rather than searching the land for El Dorado, I scoured aisles for free samples. Before inevitably being whisked away into a shopping cart, I scaled a mountain of plush toys and surveyed the expanse that lay before me, the kingdom of Costco. Whew! That's a really good intro. I could see why it has so much buzz, guys. As I mentioned right away, that opening action scene, you can also see that she's being very descriptive. Notice all the descriptiveness that's coming through here. And also pay attention to the mastery of her English language, right? She's using colons. I love colons. So powerful. It just really it's like a beat drop in techno music. I call it a beat drop. Give me a beat drop, right? To really emphasize. You also see that she's using a little bit more advanced techniques. So for example, I love doing this where you're doing a juxtaposition. You're acquainting yourself or aligning yourself to something, but then you're distinguishing it. Many people feel big because the universe is big, or many people feel small because the universe is big and they're small compared to the universe, but I feel big. I'm pulling from Neil deGrasse Tyson's The Most Astounding Fact. But these types of juxtapositions, I think, excellent. I love that because she's identifying herself, but giving herself a nice little twist. What else am I noticing here? Repetition, overcome with wonder. I wanted to touch and taste, to stick my head into industrial-sized freezers, to explore, right? So she's using the nice little parallel structure for emphasis here. Very, very capable writer. I wouldn't be surprised if she was taking AP Lang, AP Lit, and was getting A's in her essays and getting some stickers on top. One interesting thing you might be noticing, look at the reds, the squiggly reds. They're not correct. I think it should be industrial hyphen sized, right? And cinnamon hyphen sugar rocket. So key point I want to make about that. A lot of students, what they submit their essays and then they realize there's a typo and then they go blitz. They go, oh my God, Counselor J, I have this typo in this essay that I sent to Harvard. I feel like I need to call them and notify them right away. No. I mean, if it's extreme and if there's just a lot of consistent errors, just read this. If you just scan your eyes through this essay, let me scroll down. There's a lot of red squigglies. She clearly has not used Google's feature, Google document features for this grammar check and spelling check. I don't think spelling and grammar have to be immaculate. They don't have to be 100%. And I think this is a great case in point of that. Let's continue reading. Notorious for its oversized portions and $50 hot dog combo, Costco is the apex of consumerism. From the days spent being toted around in a shopping cart to when I was finally tall enough to reach lofty sample trays, Costco has endured a steady presence throughout my life. I find that interesting. The tone shifted a little bit. It began with a lot of I statements, and that's something I actually forgot I wanted to mention for the first paragraph. Do you see how there's a lot of sentences? The subject of the sentence is I. Guys, 90% of the time when you're writing a personal statement, I's always the better way to go. I think that students struggle to transition from AP Lit, AP Lang, over to personal statement and writing good college essays because in AP Lit and AP Lang, you rarely use I statements. You're usually objectifying or analyzing some form of a reading passage and whatnot. So the subject of it rarely ever is I. But that switch, that transition is necessary when you really want to showcase yourself and have this endearing, warmer, connectable sense about yourself when you're writing this personal statement. Here, she switched over to Costco, which is okay. Okay, variety is the spice of life. So the fact that she's capable of switching tones, like I'm glad that she began with the I statements and then switched over. Let's see if she switches back. As a veteran Costco shopper, she's identifying herself, right? A humble identification. Most people by this point, most students by this point would probably identify as the principal cellist that performed at Carnegie Hall. You know, they'll do all these resume flexes that just make me cringe. It's like, no, don't resume flex that stuff to me. So many students do that, and it's just not the way to go. Instead, have a creative, humble, fun, quirky sense of yourself, right? So as a veteran Costco shopper, I navigate the aisles of foodstuffs, thrusting the majority of my weight upon a generously filled shopping cart whose enormity juxtaposes my small frame. Over time, I've developed a habit of observing fellow patrons tote their carts piled with frozen burritos, cheese puffs, tubs of ice cream, and weight loss supplements. Perusing the aisles gave me time to ponder. Who needs 3 pounds of sour cream? Was cultured yogurt any more well-mannered than its uncultured counterpart? Sense of humor, intelligence, I love this. Costco gave birth to my unfettered curiosity. So right here, this is introspection, this is reflection. This is so underrated. I see a lot of students, particularly Asian writers, that really don't know how to do this. They don't know how to personally introspect. And also what's showing through this is a lot of intellectual spark. There's a deeper sense of inquiry in the student that's being showcased here. Again, is there any resume flexing going on here about how she was number one in the economics contest, and that's how she understood about the economics of Costco? No. She's going deep into these more intellectually amusing thoughts. And also that sense of humor, chef's kiss. Mwah, that is awesome right here. I think a really good sign of intelligence and social ability is your sense of humor. And a lot of my students, unfortunately, they need to work on their sense of humor. Is there anything else I could say about this paragraph? Oh man, I'm really digging this. Let's keep going. While enjoying an obligatory hot dog, I did not find myself thinking about the all-beef goodness that Costco boasted. I instead considered finitudes and infinitudes, unimagined uses for tubs of sour cream, the projectile motion of said tub when launched from an 80-foot shelf, or maybe when pushed from a speedy cart by a scrawny 17-year-old. I contemplated the philosophical. If there exists a 33-ounce jar of Nutella, do we really have free will? Sense of humor. I love this. I experienced a harsh physics lesson while observing a shopper who had no evident familiarity of inertia's work. With a cart filled to overflowing, she made her way towards the sloped exit, continuing to push and push while steadily losing control until the cart escaped her and went crashing into a concrete column, 52-inch plasma screen TV and all. Purchasing the Yuletide hickory-smoked ham inevitably led to a conversation between my father and me about Andrew Jackson's controversialities. There was no questioning Old Hickory's dedication. He was steadfast in his beliefs and pursuits, qualities I am compelled to admire, yet his morals were crooked. We both found the ham to be more likable and tender. This is just subtle, intellectual sense of humor. This is so hard to pull off as a high school student. I would argue less than 1% of U.S. students in high school right now can pull something off like this at an intellectual level. This girl clearly is just on another level. And this is hard to develop in students that only focus on AQ, academic intelligence, that only focus on grades and test scores. I know that I experience a lot of parents and students, the culture of it, the push for schools and getting into better schools being more about grades and test scores than about developing this intellectual, I guess, like flexibility, versatility, depth, genuinity. This is awesome to me. I'd say a lot of IQ signal is being thrown my way as a reader here. Notice also how she's pulling it off. Another colon here, but more importantly, she's using questions. I think questions are so underrated. If you overdo them, of course, then it can become a little bit too much. But I think she's being very tasteful. Notice how also she has a lot of questions as well. I feel like a lot of students, when they're growing up with too much of the AQ emphasis, find asking questions to be kind of a deterring thing or a weakness. In their essays, they need to provide answers. They need to provide evidence. They need to provide story. But sometimes, honestly, well, not sometimes, I think the majority of the times, I've enjoyed the essays and found most genuine the ones where students are openly questioning deeper things and having sometimes some fun with it. And the fact that she's having fun with this old hickory and who do they find more likable, I just found that to be hilarious. It made me chuckle. I also love just how playful she is. Her tone is so bright. Her personality oozes to me out as being someone who's likable and someone who's flexible and someone who's thoughtful. I'm getting a lot of good vibes so far. I adopted my exploratory skills, fine-tuned by Costco, towards my intellectual endeavors. Nice little transition. You don't need anything beautiful. But once she establishes kind of the quirky side in Costco to build up, she then moves on to perhaps some resume flexing. Let's see if she does it tastefully. Just as I sampled buffalo chicken dip or chocolate truffles, I probed the realms of history, dance, and biology, all in pursuit of the ideal cart, one overflowing with theoretical situations and notions both silly and serious. Ooh. I sampled calculus, cross-country running, scientific research, all of which are now household favorites. Did she mention how she was a cross-country team captain or that she won first place in one of her math competitions through Math Olympiad? No, right? Her flexes are so much more down to earth. In fact, to the point where it's her flexing is not really the point. What is her point? Her point is that she has this range of intellectual interests that she's then kind of synthesizing together to develop a more accurate model of the world and how the world works and where she could fit in it. I'm really liking this as an example here, guys. This is resume flexing, but done in a right way. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that right there. With card in hand, I do what scares me. With card in hand, I do what scares me. Nice use of semicolon. I absorb the warehouse that is the world. I love this. I do what scares me. I feel like so many students will be going for something other than this. They'll be going for like what they have confidence in. But the fact that she's revealing kind of the edge of her comfort level and showing me where she's at there and saying it in this humble way, I do what scares me. Oh my gosh, I think this is such a great line. Super underrated line. I'm trying to figure out what I want to highlight this as. I'm going to highlight it in red, I suppose. I absorb the warehouse that is the world. Whether it be through attempting aerial yoga, learning how to chart black body radiation using astronomical software, or dancing in front of hundreds of people, I'm compelled to try any activity that interests me in the slightest. I think I could be a little critical at this point. I feel like to a certain degree, some schools, some colleges are looking for certain types of student. I could see immediately that this is a student who'd probably get into Yale or Stanford. And the reason why is because I feel like those two schools are actively looking for students that have this type of intellectual ethos, where they are being very intellectually connected, flexible, wide-ranging. Do I think like an essay like this will get into Caltech? I feel like there are certain schools that have more direct pipelines. They appreciate intellectual range more than others. I don't know whether she got into Caltech or MIT or not, but I do tend to, if I had to give you kind of just a ballpark figure, I think Yale and Stanford, these are schools that look for intellectual vitality, intellectual range, interconnectivity, almost like a liberal arts kind of vibe. Whereas like the more tech-heavy schools tend to maybe focus a little bit more on specialization and depth. But I'm really liking her tone here. I do what scares me. I am compelled to try any activity that interests me in the slightest. A point I want to make is I've in my experience, I've run into post acceptances when the results have come out, reviewing essays with students, and I've seen some criticisms come about. And one of the criticisms is regarding the SSJ. It's too just all over the place. She's just all over the place. We should have instead written something very singular and very direct. And to a certain degree, that could maybe be that can maybe make more sense. You can justify that a bit more depending on the school that you're applying to or targeting, as I just previously mentioned. But I think this is a great example of me no longer needing to worry about that criticism. The more and more evidence of students I've seen over the years getting accepted with essays like these, the more I realize that your personal statement is really showing me just a genuine tone of who you are, who you align with, but in what ways you stand out. And I don't need a major choice here. Like, I doubt any of you listeners right now know what her major choice is by listening to this, and that's okay. The other essays for Yale and Stanford will have there'll be a supplemental prompt just for that. So this personal statement, I want you guys to walk away with the fact that it's just about showing a genuine, bright, meaningful personality of what makes you tick, what makes you get up and wake up eager for each morning. My intense desire to know, to explore beyond the bounds of rational thought. This is what defines me. Costco fuels my insatiable. Instead of using a semicolon there, I would have used a dash. I think a dash would have been so much nicer there. But anyways, I still can't. I think she's still top 1% in terms of just writing ability, just by her uses of semicolons. Guys, students, use semicolons, use colons, use questions, rhetorical questions, use dashes. Dashes are so good. Costco fuels my insatiability and cultivates curiosity within me at a cellular level. Such a unique way of phrasing that. Her intellectual, she's just so intellectually textured. She has so much unique texture to me. Encoded to immerse myself in the unknown, I find it difficult to complacently accept the what. I want to hunt for the whys and dissect the hows. In essence, I subsist on discovery. Excellent essay. Hands down, this is an Ivy League essay. I would love to see this. Pair this with good grades and test scores. Pair this with, strong leadership, strong community engagement, strong teacher recommendations. And if you apply to top 10 schools, this is an essay that ideally would get you into maybe 2 or 3 of them. The fact that she got into 4 or 5 plus, to me, I think comes down to other tags, perhaps. But yeah, something interesting to note, I did do a word count. Guys, keep in mind the word limit for a personal statement is 650 words. So the fact that it's registering as 653 tells me that this was not, it's over by 3 words. So probably this was not, there's maybe a couple of small edits that were made before she submitted the actual one, because you wouldn't be able to submit 653. Literally, it will cut you off at 650. One thing that might explain the discrepancy is that I've recognized that Google Docs word counts are different. They tabulate it differently than, let's say, Microsoft Word. So that might be the case. Maybe it has to do with some of these more unique situations with semicolons to these grammatical tenses. But yeah, I'm getting a lot of intellectual vibes here from the questions. I'm getting a lot of personalness because of the I statements. Look at all these I statements, guys. I. There's just a ton of I statements throughout this essay. So when in doubt, use I statements. It should be maybe 70% of your essay. No resume flexing. Did you hear that? Parents, students, not a lot of resume flexing. I mean, she goes into resume flexing, as I mentioned, into these intellectual endeavors, but she doesn't go so far as to take herself too seriously about what the achievements are. She focuses instead on the intellectual ponderances, the intellectual growths. Overall, really great essay. I want to share this with you guys. I'm going to kind of analyze this with my students a bit more. I just thought that this would be really helpful, because if you are a junior student right now and it's May, you should be thinking about at least a range of topics of what you want to talk about. So I hope that this was something you guys enjoyed or found helpful. I do have this desire to want to live stream or to receive more essays and ask for my opinion or evaluations on them so I can start to dish out more content that could be more directly applicable and helpful as the essay season is coming in. And we'll be into full essay season beginning once school ends usually. You want to get started as soon as possible. But yeah, I hope that was helpful. If any of you guys have any additional questions or want to leave a comment about how I can maybe make this a bit more accessible or more helpful to you, just feel free. I'm open to criticism, and I just want to thank you all for joining in and sticking to the end. All right, see you guys next time.